Hi guys, so I've been receiving some questions about apartment hunting here in New York, so I just decided to consolidate all of my tips and advice into this one video. A few disclaimers. One, I'm not a real estate agent, so everything that I'm sharing is based on my own experiences. Two, my last apartment hunt was about a year ago. So obviously right now, COVID has been affecting nearly almost every single industry, and things might just not be running as normally as they would be. Just to recap real quick on my own living situation, I'm currently living in a group of 3 and we're in a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment. We're paying $5,200 a month and that's split amongst us 3. I personally pay around $1,600 a month. If you're curious, I've uploaded an apartment tour, so I'll either link that somewhere on the screen or it'll be in the description box below. Your first step is to just get ready and be prepared. You want to have your funds, documentation ready, along with having a general idea of what's required in your future apartment. So with your funds, you're going to want to have some money available in a bank account that you can easily withdraw from. You're going to definitely need at least 2 months of rent up front. So 1 month is going to go to your landlord as a security deposit, and you'll get it back at the end of your lease as long as you didn't completely fuck up and damage your apartment. And then the next month of rent is basically just you're paying for your first month. You're also going to want to have some documents ready to be submitted. You're going to want a government issued ID. I just scanned the front and back of my driver's license. You're going to want some bank statements and your pay stubs and a letter of employment. Now here, I understand that not everyone is employed when they move to New York, whether you're a student or you're going to look for a job after you move, whatever the reason is. But you also might hear this floating around, that your salary needs to be 40 times the rent. Now, hold on, 40 times the rent? That's a pretty high salary. How do people live in the city then? If there are cases where your salaries don't hit that 40 times amount, then you can use a guarantor. A guarantor is basically someone that's also put down on the lease with you, and they're just there to guarantee that the landlord is going to receive the rent payment. And that's literally the reason for these documents like bank statements and your pay stubs. The landlord wants to make sure that, hey, my tenants are gonna give me my payments on time in full each month. Many times people use their parents or family members, and you can honestly literally use anyone as long as they agree to put down their information, and their salary has to be 40 times the rent amount for each month. It may sound a little ridiculous, 40 times the rent, but it includes everyone that's living in the unit. So for me, we have 3 people in my group, and all 3 of us have been working full times for a few years now. So thankfully for our apartment, we just hit the requirement. Most buildings are a stickler with it, but of course there are always exceptions if you do look around. Now you just want to have a general idea of what to look for. Keep an open mind and be a bit more flexible. Things like budget, the number of rooms, and location are things that you should kind of set certain guidelines on. Budget, I would say, everyone has the maximum amount that they could spend. But there are going to be plenty of options where you just see a listing and you're like, oh, that's perfect, but it's just out of my budget. Location-wise, a lot of people, when they think of New York, they're thinking of, middle of Manhattan. Of course, there's a lot of areas in Manhattan that are super expensive, but as you go further away from inner Manhattan, you'll see that the prices drop and you're gonna get a lot more space. We wanted to stay as close to Midtown Manhattan as possible just because that's where our offices are located. And I also have a roommate that commutes super early in the mornings. So here's just a list of different things you should consider for your apartment. And on the right hand side, you'll see a bunch of amenities that not all apartments necessarily have. You should kind of categorize them, seeing if they're actually required for you or not. And just to note, it's quite common for laundry, the washer and dryer, to be either in the basement of a building or not be in the building at all. You also want to determine your move-in date. Here in New York, because it moves so quickly, you really don't need to look that far ahead in time. I know if you're buying a house, you're probably gonna, possibly be looking for years, months. But for an apartment here, especially with rentals, you only need to give yourself about a couple of weeks, honestly. So have a move-in date in mind and know that when you're looking at apartments, a lot of these listings are going to have immediate move-in. So if you're planning on moving like months months later, then don't start seriously looking yet. I'd say be prepared, look at different listings to see what your options are. Just like don't get stuck on a listing because you love it, since it's probably gonna be gone by the time you actually move. There are busy seasons versus off seasons here. So in the summertime, which is around May to September, there's just generally a lot more demand. Naturally, prices are a bit higher in the summer, but also this is when you have the most options. Most rental leases are up during this time period in the summer. So when the lease is up and people don't decide to renew it, that's when, it's gonna go on the market for you to look at. So because there's so many options, but also because there's so many people looking, there's a lot of competition. It's even more fast-paced than usual. Yes, the prices are a bit higher, but also at the same time, because you have the most options here, you're still able to find good deals. So during the off season, which is around October to April, things slow down. There's definitely not as many listings, and prices are slightly lower than you would find in the summer. My group and I, we actually started looking around the winter time. There's barely any listings based on our criteria. So we kind of just waited. We weren't in like a super rush to move or anything. So around springtime is when we saw things pick up a bit more. And then by the time it was March, that's when we found our apartment and we decided to sign it. Now onto the actual hunt. So the quick process is looking at listings, viewing these apartments in person, applying for one you like, and having your application accepted. So the most common resource to use in this area is StreetEasy. It's really simple to use, it's convenient, reliable, and they even have an app, which I really liked using because you can turn on notifications if there's any new listings based on your search. So when you're making your search, you can put down your basic criteria like your location, you can check off full boroughs or specific neighborhoods, your budget, and the number of rooms that you need. So when you search, you'll get your results. Now, when you search, you can actually check off no fee, and this is referring to a one-time broker's fee, which is basically a commission that real estate agents get. There was actually a bill getting passed by the New York government where it was getting rid of broker's fees, but it's actually paused right now, so fees still do exist. You might notice that listings with a broker's fee might have slightly lower monthly rent. I noticed these fees aren't really small. They were equal to like a month of rent. So you kind of have to calculate out and see if that fee is worth the lower rent per month. So when you're looking into the listings themselves, there are a few things to double check. The monthly rent on the listing is either the gross rent or the net effective rent. So a lot of buildings offer a free month or two if you sign a yearly lease. So the net effective rent is actually the newly recalculated monthly amount with this freebie taken into consideration. So generally, you would take the gross rent times the number of months your lease is minus the gross rent times the number of months you get free, all divided by 12 to get the net effective rent. So here in this example, it would be taking 3,700 times 12 minus 3,700 times 1, and all of that divided by 12 equals about 3,392, and that's the net effective rent. So make sure you confirm what the gross and net effective rents are, because the net effective rent may end up being in your budget when your gross rent originally wasn't. You should also check the true number of bedrooms. It's common seeing flex or converted bedrooms in New York where a temporary wall is built to create an additional room, usually using the living room or the master bedroom. And this is why listings may overstate the number of bedrooms. If you look at this listing, it's saying that it's 3 bedrooms, but if you look at the floor plan, it looks like one is a converted bedroom. You may either see a listing with an already existing temporary wall, or you need to build the wall yourself. The landlord will usually recommend a third-party company to use to build a wall, which is a one-time fee. Ours was $800, and it only took a few hours for someone to come in, build the wall, and then leave. Some buildings require a 6-inch gap between the ceiling and wall, so definitely double check with the landlord on what's possible. Nowadays, because of the current environment, a lot of listings offer a virtual tour. This is good for narrowing down options, but I still recommend in-person viewings if possible, of course while still following safety precautions. You would need to schedule a viewing appointment, and I just directly sent requests here on StreetEasy. Everyone was always responsive, and there are contacts listed below just in case you need to directly reach out. Meeting with real estate agents can be helpful too, because they can recommend other listings that might not possibly be on StreetEasy. Now, of course, there are other resources you can use, especially if you're looking for roommates, like Craigslist. I know some people that have found really cheap deals here, but I've also heard of some weird stories too, so just be extra careful. Facebook groups are especially helpful if you're looking to move on a tight timeline. People are always looking for additional roommates. Gypsy has good deals, but it's better for temporary short-term housing. I don't have any experience on Roomster, but I've heard of this a lot as well. So once you find that apartment you love, you're gonna wanna submit your application as soon as possible. This is where all of those documents and funds from the beginning come into play. The landlord's gonna basically take an application where you fill out your basic info. You're also gonna pay a small fee. I think mine was maybe like $75. It should be around there. Obviously it varies, but it also shouldn't be like a ridiculous amount. So the landlord is gonna basically accept the first group that meets all of the requirements. So obviously this comes more into play during the busy season. You're gonna wanna submit that application as soon as possible. Like there's times when landlords literally get like a ton of applications and you're just not going to end up having a chance of getting it because the group that applied right before you made all the requirements. So because they go in order, you can also usually when you go to listings or when you're in communication with like a real estate agent, you can kind of ask, oh, has anyone applied yet? You're either going to have to wait and see if that group doesn't make it, if there are other groups applying as well. You just have to move quick and basically get lucky that no one else has applied yet. So if you've applied and your application gets accepted, yay, congrats! You are almost at the finish line. So now all you have to do is go in person, sign the lease, and submit your rent and deposit. So here, I recommend you looking at your place, your future place, one more time, basically seeing if everything's intact, that nothing's damaged. If there are things that need to be fixed, I suggest you take footage of it and show your landlord so that everything's good and in place when you move in. So after that, you basically get your lease, sign it, submit your rent, deposit, and grab the key. Your lease is probably gonna be really, really thick. Like mine was literally like a book. But I'd say try to read everything as much as you can. Take photos if you need to, just to double check everything and making sure you don't have any hidden fees and the rent is correct. There's also just a bunch of other agreement terms that you should definitely look at before signing. So those are all of my tips and I really hope this was helpful. Whether your apartment search is now or in the future, good luck and I'll see you in my next video. Thanks, bye!